about as excited as you can get for a pay-per-view right there. Uninterrupted fights. The main event, great main event. And I think this main event kind of speaks to how deep the bantamweight division is. That we've got Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera, and I think Chito is the 5th or 6th ranked bantamweight. And like, this is still a great fight. It's like they went down a decent amount to the rankings to get to this fight, and it's a great fight. And it's a rematch. First fight obviously ended with Chito landing a leg kick. Sean's leg kind of shuts off. Chito goes out, gets the finish. Some controversy there. Sean likes to claim it as not a loss. Some people like to make the excuses. However you view that fight, today or Saturday, we are getting answers, and these two are running it back. What are you guys looking forward to for Sean's first title defense and this matchup? Anthony, we can throw it over to you first.
I guess, I don't know. It's a new era in the sense, right? They've been building O'Malley. He's supposed to be one of the next faces of the USC or UFC. So let's see. I don't know. Let's see what a first title defense, a headline pay-per-view by him does now. Because if he is supposed to be, one of the most popular stars and one of the biggest faces, let's see if it has the same aura of like a John Jones or McGregor level, pay-per-view card. That would be my first thing, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's my big question is he's talked about all the pay-per-view numbers and all that stuff and wanting to be that next massive UFC face star, whether it's even the face of the UFC. Little concerning because I don't know if you guys saw it. Ilia Topuria, less than a few weeks after his title, now that he's won that, he has the same amount of followers on Instagram as Sean O'Malley, if not more by now. So that just questions how big of a star O'Malley actually is. We'll find out when it is his name as the headliner. Sure, he was on the main event against Aljamain Sterling, but he wasn't the champion. Now he is in Miami. Really was trying to go to this card, but $500 for the last row. I'd rather just stay at home on that one.
Yeah, and I think they kind of knew what they were doing here. For Sean O'Malley in Miami, stat card. I believe this week is college spring break for a lot of colleges, and that's kind of the target demographic that they're trying to hit with O'Malley. They want that younger generation. They want the social media generation, and that's what they're trying to hit here with O'Malley. And hey, if that means they're going to build the stack fight card and put it in Miami, fine by me. I've got no complaints. Should be energetic. And one thing that I find interesting about this fight is, and before we even get into like the skills and the X's and O's, in my opinion, I kind of look at Chito Vera like a guy that we've seen get the upset in this spot. Like, nothing to do with skills, but like comparing this fight and this matchup and this personality, like Chito reminds me of like a Nate Diaz in a way who got the upset over Conor. He reminds me of a Michael Bisping, a guy who's been in the UFC for a really long time in a way, who got the upset title win. We saw Sean Strickland do it a couple months ago. So, he kind of reminds me in ways of each of these guys. Not identical to any of them, obviously, but he kind of reminds me of these guys. And it's like, man, if Sean Strickland can upset Israel Adesanya, Chito Vera can certainly upset Sean O'Malley. And I've just got this little gut feeling that this may go haywire for the UFC and kind of blow up in their face with Chito. What do you guys kind of make of Chito as a challenger in this spot? Jerry, go ahead.
I mean, he's about as dangerous a guy as you can face. He has 8 knockouts, 10 submissions in his MMA career. He's just been running through people. And we saw, obviously, the front kick against Frankie Edgar that kind of marked the end or the beginning of the end for Frankie, who's now a UFC Hall of Famer. That shows that while he's done that, Marla or Chito Vera has just been cruising up to the top. Did lose against Corey Sandhagen in that split decision. I think Corey Sandhagen's one of the best guys in this division, so that's not a bad loss by any means. Only other guy he's lost to recently was, I guess, Jose Aldo. You can't knock him for losing to Jose Aldo. No, there's one of the best ever. So I think Chito has the potential to beat O'Malley. I'm curious. You did say like this feels like the Nate Diaz kind of thing. To me, Nate Diaz did get the first upset. That might have already come for Cheeto when then McGregor came back and got the decision the second time. So this is the second one. That's what makes this fight so interesting. Is it was what 4 years ago almost that the two fought the first time. A lot has changed since then. They've both gotten much better. O'Malley's confidence has risen through the roof, and I think that's what makes him extremely dangerous and something Cheeto needs to be aware of is he can put people's lights out. No one's ever finished Cheeto Vera. O'Malley might be the first to do so.
Yeah, I was. This was when I was on the trip, and I had missed that podcast. But I think you guys were just for real quick previewing this card, and you had said that Nate Diaz line, and I thought that was really perfect. I didn't thought about it like that, but I thought that was a perfect way to sum it up. As someone though that wasn't quite tapped into all the lead up before that first Nate Diaz fight, but I could definitely see some similarities. But I think, I mean, like you said, Jerry, definitely extremely dangerous, and that's the scary part for O'Malley. But I would say I've always been someone that's been more out on Cheeto, I would say, than most. And it's just because I can't stand how slow he starts his fights, but he fights 3 rounds. Or when he's doing these in 3 round fights is the big, it's going to be extremely hard to win a fight if you're going to lose your first round in every single one. But I can see with getting the whole 5 rounds and stuff, like you said, great chin. It's a pretty good gas tank too, so he's going to be dangerous for all 5 rounds. But and then kind of like you said, discussing he has great highlight knockouts, but I think the two best people he's fought he's lost to. And I'd count that in is a younger Jose, as in I don't know how long ago that fight was, but and then Corey Sandhagen, and I didn't know if that was a split decision because I don't remember thinking that was a split decision when I was watching it. So, but like you said, I mean he got one win. There's no reason he can't do it again. I believe he can beat anyone in the division. I just don't have confidence that it's going to happen, more than 3 times out of 10. Like he obviously can pick his certain strikes and gets these highlight knockouts. But if the two people that I thought were the best two people he's fought, he's lost to, I also would think Sean's better than him. So I'm leaning definitely more Sean.
Yeah. And going back to his 2 losses, the Aldo loss was really interesting because Aldo wrestled a lot in that fight. And Cheeto does not do good when you put him on his back. Great submission skills, but you can put him on his back for a long period of time and probably won't be a factor in this fight. And then in the Sandhagen fight, it's like the clearest 50-45 of all time Sandhagen. I shouldn't say all time, but abundantly clear 50-45. And then one of the judges scored it for Cheeto. And I believe after the fight, Sandhagen said something along the lines of like, yeah, I think I know who that is, and I think he doesn't like me. Apparently, Corey had like a run-in with him one time. That judge was reffing one of Corey's teammates' fights, and Corey got into an argument with him. And he thinks that's kind of where that scorecard came from, but
That's insane.
Interesting that's even something he has to deal with, considering how clear it was that he won that fight. So
it's like Scott Foster and Chris Paul right there.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as Cheeto goes, like I agree with a lot of the things you said, Anthony, about Cheeto. Like Cheeto, he will start very, very slow. And that's kind of helped him in some fights because in some fights he's good at reading things and getting looks like the Dominic Cruz fight. He lost a lot of minutes leading up to that knockout. But like that's not every fight. You're not going to be able to do that in every single fight. And he doesn't throw a ton. And it's super frustrating because Cheeto has a ton of skills that are like awesome when he uses them. Like he's got a great jab, and like he pretty much only threw his jab and his straight against Pedro Munoz and busted him up pretty good. And it's like just go out there and throw your jab, throw your straight, and start adding on to it once you start landing those. But it's not really what he does, and it's kind of frustrating. And he's got these great kicks, like insane kicks. One of the best kickers in the sport. We don't really see him that much. Like he landed the front kick knockout and he landed the head kick knockout and he knocked down Rob Font with a hook kick. You never see guys land hook kicks in the UFC. So he's got this really interesting skill set backed with cardio that can take him 25 minutes and a chin that makes sure that he stays in the octagon for all 25. So at a minimum, Cheeto is going to make this interesting. My only concern is that he falls behind early and never catches up like he did in the Sandhagen fight.
Yeah, that's something definitely that's in the back of my mind as well. Now, especially now that you guys have been talking on it, is Sean O'Malley also likes to go out there and finish people quickly and try and put the pressure on and get them done early. If Cheeto comes out slow, could be a short night for him. But at the same time, we haven't seen O'Malley go 5 rounds. If it does go 5 rounds, how will he hold up compared to Cheeto and his? We know he can, and we know he has the gas tank to keep going. Something else just to think about in terms of that aspect. That's what makes this fight very, very intriguing and interesting. Is there's so many little aspects of it, of so many different ways this fight can go.
I think I was gonna say besides the starting slow, I guess that was my main issue is how low output he is. And it feels like he never does enough. But then again, he like wipes the slate clean because then he just gets some late round insane knockout. And then you can't complain that much that he didn't do enough when he still found the shot for the knockout. But like you said about getting behind too, if that's his game plan, because he obviously is great at reading things, right? Because he keeps picking up on things and he can gets these knockdowns and KOs. But to try to do it to O'Malley, I feel like is the wrong person to try to wait to find the exact perfect shot and keep reading him when he feints so heavily and moves so his own unique way of fighting. But yeah, I think definitely one of the last things I will say on this is one why I should, because it was so long ago and I've never actually really rewatched the fight since, but I would like to watch that first one again just to see, even though kind of like you said, Jerry, and I agree earlier that they have changed. They've gotten so much better, both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, like it's a lot harder to get that comeback knockout against Sean. And like when you're looking at the guys that he did knock out, like Frankie Edgar has flaws that can be exposed. He dips his head very, very drastically when he comes into the pocket. That's why Ortega knocked him out with an uppercut. That's why Corey Sandhagen knocked him out with a flying knee, and that's why Cheeto landed a front kick. I believe Gutierrez got a knee as well. So it's kind of his style. Dominic Cruz is a guy who goes out there with a lot of unique movement, and he caught him in the middle of one of his unique movements. He practically ran into the knockout, and it's a great read. Both are great reads, but my point is those reads are easier to find against a Cruz, against a Edgar, in comparison to an O'Malley. He will have the extra 2 rounds, which he also had in the Cruz fight. I believe the Edgar fight was only 3. So that's a positive, but like it is very tough to be overly confident that he finds that shot. What I will say is that if he can, so going like deep into skills, like Sean can do every single thing that Corey Sandhagen did to win that fight. Like Corey used feints, he used his length, he used his speed, he used his feint, or I already said feints, used like stance switches, danced all around the octagon to a bunch of different attacks. Sean can go out there and do every single thing that Corey did. He can just copy and paste Corey's game plan practically. And we saw that Cheeto didn't really have an answer, and that's a big concern for me for Cheeto. And if he wants to really change this fight for him, he's going to have to land leg kicks, and he lands really good leg kicks, doesn't throw them often enough. Which is a theme here. And he didn't throw the leg kicks against Sandhagen, which you'd think against Sandhagen, you'd like to kick his legs and decrease that movement a little bit. He didn't do that, so it's hard to expect him to do it this time around. So there are just a lot of concerns on the Cheeto side for me.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he is going to go back to using leg kicks just because that's what kind of helped him big time in that first fight between the two of them. It's one of those things, but it's what you're saying about the comparisons to Sandhagen. O'Malley's also what makes him dangerous, and I'll use the Piotr Jan fight, for example. He kind of got an early lead and then just held off Jan, kept him at range. O'Malley's 3 inches taller. I want to say he has a little bit longer of a reach. He is a very, very tall bantamweight that he can use, and he knows how to use his body and use his length. So that's something else I'll keep in the back of my mind for this is if he does get up early, if he wins the first 2 rounds, he can kind of just ease it and keep him away. Similar to, I'll say, like what Israel Adesanya used to do, where he would just do smart tactical fighting and kind of get the strikes, keep it at distance, don't take any damage because can't get knocked out if you don't get hit.
Yeah, and another thing is that the one difference between Sean and Corey is that Sean has great counters. So, like, even if Cheeto really gets in his face, then, Sean is great at landing those slide back counters. So, I think it's a really tough fight for Cheeto unless he can find a way to make this stationary and kind of stop Sean's movement. Not going to be very easy, though. So, I do have to really side with Sean in this matchup as much as, like I said earlier, the vibes are the vibes of kind of an upset brewing here. But like, I just don't really see it from a skills perspective. So it's hard to be overly confident in it. So any closing thoughts on the main event for either of you before we move over to the co-main, which is also a great fight and also 5 rounds?
I mean, there's so much I think we could still talk about, but this fight's just going to be fun. So unpredictable. I'm honestly surprised O'Malley's as big a betting favorite as he is.
What's the line?
UFC website says it's minus 218 for O'Malley, plus 180 for Cheeto.
Yeah, and that's moved quite a bit.
Yeah.
Which way?
Minus
towards Sean. So Sean is minus 270, minus 250, depending on the book.
Yeah.
Cheeto plus 220, plus 230 in some spots. So
Plus 230.
Here's a PSA to a lot of people who maybe don't know a ton about MMA betting, but be really wary with some of these favorites. Sometimes favorites are very, very justified, but lately, and especially in the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of favorites, and there's probably been a lot of parlay money on favorites, and we've seen lines move heavily towards favorites. Last week, Basharat was like a minus 1,000 favorite, and Ayman Zahabi beat him as like a plus 600 dog. And I think Basharat started in like the minus 250 range, and just so much parlay money comes in and it moves them. Other fights as well. Umar closed at like minus 1,600 last week. So be careful with some of these big favorites because maybe they should be a minus 200 favorite or a minus 250 favorite, but all this parlay money comes in and all of a sudden they're minus 500 for really inexplicable reasons, and there just aren't enough people that want to plug their nose and take the dog shot. So be wary if you're making parlays out there. Just a public service announcement.
I was a victim of that minus 900 fight this weekend. I went 9 for 10 on my bet. That was the only one I lost because I was like minus 900. I didn't look too much into the fight. I was just like, okay, easy enough. We'll throw it in there.
You do always do good for like 9 out of 10s because you make the bigger ones where you just pick the kind of the UFC card. But I was gonna say also maybe PSA, maybe don't touch a minus 900. You can probably leave that at home.
Yeah, I think the books had a good time watching UFC last week, seeing one of the big favorites crash out and bust what I assume to be a lot of parlays. So